Welcome to a video on graphing absolute value equations. So these are going to look a little bit different than our linear equations did. So just a reminder, an absolute value review. So here we have the absolute value of 4. Well, the absolute value of 4 is 4. Absolute value tells you the distance on a number line that something is from 0, which means that the absolute value of negative 4 is also 4. So our absolute values, when you take an absolute value, you're going to get a positive answer. So the absolute value of negative 5, well, the absolute value of negative 5, it's 5 away from 0, so it's 5. The absolute value of 17 is just 17. So rules for graphing. Make sure it has y equals. So we want it to be y equals. We don't want anything over there with our y. We're going to set our absolute value equal to 0. Like whatever's inside the absolute value equal to 0. The reason we do that is because when we make an xy chart, we're going to have our step 2 in the middle. We're going to have whatever that x equals as our middle part of our xy chart. We fill out the chart, then we graph our points, and then we draw the lines. So we do all that. So those are the 5 rules we're going to follow to graph our absolute value equations. So let's go through and do some examples. So we have y equals the absolute value of x. Step 1, does it say y equals? Boom, it does. Step 2 is I want to make this, whatever's inside here, equals 0. So I'm just going to say x equals 0. I'm going to use that x equals 0 over here on my xy chart. That's going to be the middle of my XY chart. Now to fill out the rest of my chart, you can basically fill out any numbers up here that would be less than your middle, and these be larger than your middle. I highly suggest you do this. I'm going to pick one number smaller than my middle, so negative 1, and then one number smaller than that. Then we're going to go one number bigger and one number bigger than that. And then from there we go to what we do for for filling out an XY chart. We're just going to plug these numbers in for x. So we get negative 2. So y equals the absolute value of negative 2, which is 2. Negative 1, y equals, and then in substitute for x, I put negative 1. I get 1. We already did 0, so 1. Y equals the absolute value of 1, and we get 1. And then 2, the absolute value of 2 is 2. So now we fill that in here, and you'll see that if we look here, we see that these are the same number. Negative 1 and 1, 1 and 1. So whenever you do that, if you pick, like I did, the 1 away, you should get something that looks like that. Now I didn't do the 0, so let's go ahead and do the 0. So for 0, y equals the absolute value of 0, and we also get 0. So here we go. We filled out our XY chart. So the next step is to just plot these on a graph. So I'm going to plot these on a graph over here. So I get negative 2, 2. Negative 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 2. Now, absolute value, it's not a straight line, it's not a curve. It's basically like a giant V. So we have a giant V here, going 2 directions. So now we're going to work on this. It's y equals the absolute value of x minus 2. So we're going to graph that. So it does say y equals, and then my next step is I want to set the inside equal to 0. X minus 2 equals 0. Add 2, so x equals 2. So I'm going to put 2 as my middle. Then I'm going to pick 2 smaller, and then 2 immediately bigger. Now I'm going to plug those in. So start with the 0. So y equals the absolute value of 0 minus 2, which is the absolute value of negative 2, which is just 2. Plug in 1. Y equals the absolute value of 1 minus 2, which is the absolute value of negative 1, which is 1. Plug in 2. So I get y equals the absolute value of 2 minus 2, which will give us the absolute value of 0. That's a really wonky 3, so I'm going to redraw it. So 3, y equals the absolute value of 3 minus 2, which is 1, and the absolute value of 1 is 1. And finally the 4, we get the absolute value of 4 minus 2, which is the absolute value of 2, and that is 2. So I'm going to fill out my chart. So 2, 1, 0, 1, 2. Now I'm going to graph this on the next one. So we're at 0, 2. Then we're at 1, 1, 2, 0, 3, 1, and 4, 2. I'm going to draw my V for my absolute value. Okay, so here's the last example we're going to do, and it does say y equals, and the next step is I got to set this equal to 0, and I'm only setting this equal to 0. I don't care about that whenever I'm trying to find my middle point. So I set x plus 2 equal to 0. I subtract 2, and I get x equals negative 2. So I know my middle is going to be negative 2. And this negative 2 here has nothing to do with the negative 2 that I just got there. Absolutely nothing. I'm going to pick two numbers smaller, so negative 3, negative 4, and two numbers immediately bigger, negative 1, 0. Now I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and fill out the rest of this chart. I urge you to go ahead, pause the video, and do that with me, and then play the video again to see the results. I'm also going to graph it as well. So go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, so here is my work for the XY chart. So go ahead, pause the video, check that out. And then we're going to go over to the graph now. Here's my graph for that. So go ahead and check your work with mine. After you do that, video is over.